Welcome to Free and Accepted Podcasting, Suffolk Freemasons podcast designed to inform, entertain and educate. Welcome to another episode of Suffolk Freemasons Free and Accepted podcasts. In this episode, we talk of the ceremony of the empty chair. I am your host, Mark Jepson. I have with me my co-host,
Roger Corsten.
And our two guests today are Steve
Chapman.
Steve, welcome. And
Peter Thorogood.
Welcome. Welcome to you both, gentlemen. We are all members, or have been members, of the ceremony of the empty chair, which is an incredibly moving ceremony, and we're going to touch on that throughout this conversation. But Peter, this wouldn't have been the case had it not really been for yourself. So where's the embryonic stages of the ceremony of the empty chair?
About 10 years ago, I heard a fellow Mason had been to Staffordshire and seen the ceremony of the empty chair as performed by a lodge there. And it was completely American. It was written after the American Civil War to bring people together again in Masonic lodges. And it actually worked. It was superb. So he got me a script. I liked it. I made quite a few amendments. I kept much the same ceremony, but the words were entirely different. And I based it completely on the remnants or survivors of our First World War, the guys that fought in that, rather than the American Civil War. So it became vastly a British and Allied ceremony. And then it just took off. It began to the Stewards Lodge eventually.
So how did it get to the Stewards Lodge?
Because I was bullied into it.
And who bullied you into that?
Two bullies.
Without them being the risk of being sued, do you wish to name the two?
Of course I do. That's why I'm here. Brother Ian Yeldon and Brother John Rice, who collared me at my friend's funeral where I'd just done the oration and said, would you like to give this to the Stewards Lodge? And I meant it. I didn't have much choice, being very much the boy there. And that's what happened. And it's really... the Stewards Lodge were the ideal
vehicle.
Platform.
And do you know, I remember the meeting where John Rice said, boys, I want some volunteers. I want to deliver this. And there was something about John Rice that you always felt inspired to follow.
Well, the thing is, being a steward, the question is always answered by yes. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've got to remember, I wasn't a steward at that time.
No.
No, but I think it was John who just inspired a number of us to go, actually, I want to be part of this. And boy, have we been blessed by some fantastic ceremonies.
Yeah, no, I can just remember that time I picked up the phone and said to Peter, I'd like to be involved in this team. And I'm very pleased that I did. I think the first wonderful meeting that I attended, and I was actually junior warden, so I did Flanders Fields poem, was a Doric Lodge in Woodbridge, which was really small, but packed out on that particular occasion. That was a lovely meeting. I think that was my first experience of it.
Yeah. So how does the empty chair is performed? So it's performed by the stewards. So what actually happens in the ceremony?
Well, it starts off with the orator, which used to be myself, and it's now Steve, the speaker, who took the role over. And we get up and we introduce our ceremony, tell everybody what should be occurring. And because it's been performed a great number of times and very often rehearsed, it seems to always go off without a hitch, really. The boys do it well. The difference is, between the lodges, is the oratory can be different depending on who they lost in the First World War, etc., and certain salient facts about that lodge and wartime. But there's very much the same sort of ceremony on the floor with the empty chair itself.
So the stewards take the role over from the master warden.
Each of the players sit immediately next to the post that they will take, and then when the master changes them, they immediately smoothly change over so that the senior warden becomes one of ours, and likewise right the way across, which is why there are 11 players, including the organist and the orator. The worshipful master, of course, changes, as well as the wardens and the 2 deacons, so that the whole ceremony is performed by the players.
And I understand, Peter, when it first came in, you were very religious on what we would wear. So the stewards would always have their apron, but no collar. Is that correct?
It is correct. I decided that, and I'm not normally domineering, but I decided we're going to do it properly in the way I thought it should be done. And thankfully, everybody agreed with me. And that's what we've done it since. Yeah, it's always a black suit. It's a black Masonic tie, a poppy, no jewels or decorations, and an entered apprentice's apron. And that is it. And everybody, no matter what your rank, that's what you'll be wearing for the ceremony.
I think one of the outstanding features of the ceremony is Graham Colthorpe, our organist.
Very much so.
And I think Steve.
Yeah, I mean, he's a linchpin to the whole thing. He is a very accomplished player. Of course, he's provincial organist after all, but he knows the atmosphere that ceremony engenders, and he just teases the right tunes and the right the way of playing, and it creates that atmosphere. Of course, the other thing is we're playing, or he is playing, songs from that period, which of course are very poignant anyway. But it's just magnificently done.
What is amazing for all the players is we all go waltzing in with our case, with our red apron, and poor old Graham comes in with the organ and his speaker.
Well, he's very...
And a lot of people have looked at us on the underground, especially when we've been up into London. So what is going on here?
I mean, I do recall, I think one of the last times we did the ceremony was to the Grand Stewards. And we had a meal in the vestibule of Grand Lodge at the end of it.
That was terrific, wasn't it?
We were incredibly well received. And it's fair to say that Graham didn't remember getting his equipment home. And he's always so careful where everything is. And he said to me the following day, I don't remember who helped me get the keyboard and the speaker back.
That lodge was Regularity 91.
Yes, that's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
One of the things that we haven't mentioned, and doesn't get mentioned very often, is that every time we go and do a performance, we're usually offered the charity column for charity. And it has raised many thousands of pounds for our Masonic charities, and it goes where we decide it will go. But it's been, I know it's a byproduct, of Freemasonry, but it's wonderful to see the response and the money that comes in. To tell those worthy charities, Masonic charities.
And I think what's really important is if any lodge has a member of the armed forces, past or present, you see the emotion from them, which can be emotional for you.
Oh, yeah. No question about that. It can be. I think at the end of that meeting I just mentioned, Regularity 91, there were certainly some members who were in tears at the end. And as you say, moving for us too. Bill, I think, was junior warden at the time, and he sat immediately in front of someone who's...
And the one that really got me was we went to Nottingham, and was it their provincial Grand Master who was and he was in tears, but he caught me, and I was senior warden on that one, that he talked about his grandfather, I think, or his great-grandfather being in the Nottingham Rifles.
Posties.
Postman.
He was a postman,
Nottingham Post Office Rifles. And they all went off, prepared to go off for the First World War. And everybody from the town or that battalion had signed a Union Jack.
It was very interesting because he said, don't look too closely because there's a lot of 4-letter words.
But he then suddenly appeared, or he produced it from behind the lectern, didn't he? And showed us, and we've got a photograph of it. And you think you are seeing part of history, and you know that some of those brave young men signed that Union Jack,
Yeah.
but never came back.
Yes, I've seen that. Yeah.
No, I mean, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the other one, prior to that,
Well, can I interrupt on that? Because I think there was even a more rememberable night that night, because an ex-policeman got clobbered on a speed trap, I believe, on his way home.
No, he didn't actually.
Oh.
I think if you're going to get your facts, co-host that for this meeting anyway, I actually got caught because I was in a tram lane.
Oh, right.
And in fact, Peter Wood had said to me, well, my son was at university here, but he didn't seem to remind me that I shouldn't be in the tram. So, no, I did get caught. Yeah.
Yeah, so
But I was, thank you for that. But what I was also I'm going to move, we went down to the Scottish Rifles at Mark Mason's lodge, didn't we? And that night, they had a football from, I think, the Irish Rifles from the First World War.
That's where I get confused. It was London Scottish was the lodge that we met with, but it was the London Irish football. That's right.
Yeah.
But that was a meeting where it nearly didn't happen.
That is a brilliant thing to bring in, actually. Kieran and I, important players, not completely irreplaceable, but at the time we were, and got as far as wherever it was on the train, and the train went no further, and we had to catch planes and boats and taxis and buses to try to get to Mark Mason's Hall by 3:00 in the afternoon.
Peter was having
And I
kids.
do remember seeing Peter's ashen face as we managed to walk through with minutes to spare.
Well, there was other drama. Whilst we were worrying about you, the other drama was that Peter suddenly realised he'd bought no evergreen. And so I think I borrowed it, is the word, Peter, from the flower displays they had in the Mark Mason
In the vestibule at Mark Mason's Hall, there were some lovely flower arrangements. They weren't so lovely by the time he'd had to give us our evergreen.
There's so much to tell. Isn't there?
Yeah,
So
for
many
the,
things.
for the listeners, the evergreen is a part of the ceremony. So when you come along and see it, you will understand what we're on about. But yes,
It's a very important part.
It is very good.
But what they were also talking about that football, the Irish Rifles football, used in the First World War in the I don't know what they called the area they called between
No man's
land.
Mm-hmm.
And the story told to us was that they would start to play football, and the Germans weren't sure if this was downtime and should they go and play football. But being the Irish, they advanced with the ball and then started shooting.
There were some lovely stories. Every time we went out, there was I think 3 times when we've been to London, there's been Chelsea pensions there in their regalia or their uniforms, and it's been marvellous to sit with some of those old boys and get the stories from them as well.
Yeah, I had one of the guys come up to me after one of them, and he said, I know it was all about the First World War. He said, but I just remembered my old mate in the Second World War. And he just come back to me. We fighting together, and he lost his life. And he said it's just so moving, and tears were coming down his face, and you couldn't,
Well, if you think that it's about the First World War, but the final prayer is actually from the Second World War, Kohima.
Yes,
the Kohima prayer, which for family reasons is very important to me. And I just thought I'd include that.
Yes, whether you're able to make it or not, Peter, we always recite that at the end.
And I think, again, we don't want to let people into too much, but you can tell people they don't understand how emotive it is until they witness it. But we have the Comrades poem by Owen Carthedore.
Yeah, that's, of course, moving. Everyone, well, most people know that.
yes, yeah.
It's a very poignant poem about schoolboys who grew up together and don't come home.
Yeah, and Flanders Field, which Bill Detosiers does very, very well.
Absolutely.
But by God, you used to do it exceptionally well.
Oh, will Bill hear that?
Yes, he will. I've done it all.
I will say actually that Peter has put notations under a lot of the script that lives on. Must be read out, must be read aloud rather than learnt.
Yeah.
But the Flanders Field, I have to say, I couldn't resist learning it because when you're reading something, your head is inclined downwards. But if you learn it, you can have your head up.
Also, if the lighting is not very good,
No, that's right.
then you suddenly you're not able
Anyway,
to.
the first time I did it, Peter sidled up to me at the end and said, "You've learnt that, haven't you, you buggers?"
But I think sometimes you get the intonation, and I always remember. And this is not a conversation about we slap each other's back and say how well we did. But I can always remember how even John Rice could get emotional because we were at St Luke's Lodge, and I'd done the Worshipful Master's role. And as I went back to the seat to sit down, I put my hand on the chair, and he just kept tapping my hand as if to say, "You did a good job, boy." But that's more about not the job I did, but it's about the emotion it evokes in people. And these are people who have had grandparents who would have parents or grandparents.
I find it, what I do is writing. I've done it for 50 years. Presentations, plays. I've never written 2 plays, and this is the only one that's been successful, so there you go. But the books have gone all right, the short stories have done rather well. The things is that I can get emotive with this ceremonial chair, and people rather like me being emotive.
Yes, there's nothing wrong with that.
And I don't normally do that in my writings.
No.
And that's given me, if you like, an outlet, a new way of writing. I was taught by a wonderful Fleet Street journalist, I think, of how to write. And he put me in good stead. But that's mine. The emotive stuff is what I want to do.
Well, that's always nice. And I think one of the joys of Masonry is that if you have been involved in something that lives on, that you can always look back at your Masonic, we call it career. I don't like to call it career.
Not career.
Journey. Thank you.
Yeah.
That if you can say within that journey that you have done something that you contributed to the province, you contributed to society, and you can sit and go, actually, that was why I joined.
Undoubtedly, yeah, totally agree.
If we just like to mention the fact that this one that we're going to do in America is based on my history, and I wrote a short book about the 486th Bomber Group, American Bomber Group, that was stationed here in Sudbury during the war. And I used them as my inspiration for this ceremony. And when I was doing this, and I was also a member of their group, they used to come over every 10 years and have a big meeting here and get together, and often use my pub as their headquarters. But they've all passed away now, or they're no longer with us. And it was very moving to sit with these old boys who'd been here in Sudbury during the war and get the stories from them. And that's so, if you like, gave us such a good background for writing this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and myself and Roger didn't go to this one. But Steve, you were telling us about the builders of the Silent City.
Yes, but for some I would say, well, that was a very well attended meeting up at Great Queen Street. The builders of the Silent Cities is essentially a lodge that was formed in 1919, and it consisted of who was it consisting of? The actual army?
Yeah, it's the guys who were actually involved with the burial.
Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Yeah.
Right.
So they were. You can use the expression "left behind," but basically their role was to produce the wonderful cemeteries of rows of crosses, and to maintain the grounds, which are still there now, of course. But I think Kipling was one of the founder members.
Yes, he was.
But the thing I particularly liked about this lodge was its Anglo-French, and the master was French. In fact, he couldn't really speak very much English, and he did quite a bit of his opening and closing in French. And there were other French members of that lodge. Because of that Anglo-French connection, of course, were builders of the Silent Cities. And they were, I think this was just before COVID took its grip on us, because they were really keen for us to go back as guests to Ypres.
Yes.
Where...
it was such a shame we never got that.
Yeah. Anyway, so that was...
One thing I'll always remember, Kipling wrote, "A British soldier known only to God." which is on the epitaph to all the graves of the unknown warriors buried there. And it was Chapman who helped to form that lodge, and the ideals behind it. And without Chapman, I would never have started this.
No. And I think just to clarify, people haven't picked that up, Builders of the Silent Cities are about the cemeteries in front.
Yes, sorry, I didn't clarify that very well, but yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah.
So a part of the ceremony, we use the sword, which is housed here in Sudbury because it belonged to.
It belonged to William Morris Arms, who's a lieutenant colonel, and in the 5th Suffolks, was killed at Gallipoli, and one of his brothers also died in that war, and that was his dress sword, and it was found in his belongings in his tent or wherever, and his sisters had the sword inscribed and given to his lodge at the time when this building was purchased wholly by the Masonic Freemasons. And so we use that very sword today as our Tyler sword.
Yeah, and we take that around with us.
Unfortunately,
unless we go to London.
we have to be very careful about where we take it, because not only is it a dangerous weapon, but it's also a very valuable piece that we hate to lose. So it doesn't get a visit every time.
You can just imagine take that to America.
You could try and
you can go through customs.
Actually, my wife made a scabbard for it, a leather cover for it, so we could transport it without it being recognised as a sword.
But you were telling us, Peter, you're taking this to America in November, but you received a phone call at 4:30 one morning.
4 o'clock one morning, I was awake, I suppose, and this American phone, and he said, "Are you to Thorogood?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I just read your script for the Ceremony of the Empty Chair that you're going to be performing over here in America." He said, "I don't live in Pennsylvania, where you're performing." He said, "I live many miles from there. I've no idea how he got the script, because I only sent 2 copies over there just to see how they would like it."
Yes.
And he said, "I just have to tell you, I can't say much more." He was crying. He was in tears. He was so moved by what we'd done to remember the Americans who died, our allies.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few of you going now, isn't there?
Yes, we've got, with wives, a lot of guys taking their wives, etc. We've got about 28 going.
That's where we'll have to have another chat to hear how you got on.
Yeah.
Now, I just want to touch on a couple of things. Some of the other temples. I mean, we've performed this at Temple 10, which is known as the Indian Temple.
Yes.
The Grand Lodge.
Yeah.
That was a stunning
art deco.
Yeah, it's an amazing lodge, that one.
It's Art Deco.
Is it Art Deco? Is that the same one anyway?
Yeah, because
there's 20 as well. They're all impressive. Lodge.
Yeah.
But equally, we went to Coggeshall, wasn't it? In Essex.
Say that again.
Was it Coggeshall?
No, Witham. Not Witham, no, Kelvedon.
Kelvedon.
Yes,
Kelvedon.
I knew I had it wrong because you were all looking at me like...
Coggeshall hasn't got a lodge. They did have for that branch now.
Kelvedon. And again, a lot smaller. And what I'm trying to get to people is we don't have to perform in the biggest ones. That was a very intimate.
Yes,
I think you'll find that members of Easterford's Lodge that hear this will be mortified that we call that a little lodge, because it's quite a big building and it's a highly prestigious lodge as well.
It's beautiful.
Would I be correct in saying that?
Yeah, but I don't. But it's more for people who think, well, actually, I wouldn't mind you performing that. It isn't all at the big temples in London.
No, I know you're quite right.
Yeah, we've been around the province, and also we've been to Cambridge.
Yes,
Nottingham, Northampton, so forth.
That's right. Yes. So we have got a program coming up of about three meetings,
3 times
apart from the American one as well.
One at our home lodge.
Yes.
In other words, Provincial Grand Stewards at Lowestoft. And the second one will be
St Luke's Lodge in Ipswich.
St Luke's, that's right. St Luke's.
That's on the 13th of November, so that's 2 days after the armistice, which will be very poignant.
And the third one is on the 27th of
November.
I think it's on the 27th of November.
In London, I believe.
In London.
That's after we come back.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's not at Great Queen Street.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, I personally like going to all these meetings, especially if I get a lovely phone call from the orator, Steve Chapman, saying, would you like a lift? Because what I really look forward to is the drive home, and I get serenaded by all Eagles songs sung by Steve Chapman.
Yes, I do. Mind you, I was very, very drunk at the time.
You were driving.
You were driving.
Show me the way to go home. No, sorry. No.
Your previous orator would have no way sung to you.
No.
You'd been snoring in the back of the car.
Yeah, but what it also proves is that getting involved in something Masonic, and we have become a band of brothers within a band of brothers.
Yes, that's very true.
Where we have developed this rapport.
Yeah.
And to have been privileged to have been part of this. Now, I think the message is that within Suffolk Province, you can get involved in other things that help your Masonic journey.
Yeah,
because we've known each other now through this ceremony of the empty chair.
Yes, that's very true.
For about 8 years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always have to be about ritual. This is not about our Masonic ritual. It's about a ceremony that, although ritualised, is not our Masonic ritual. It's lovely.
And in the previous episode, we talked to Larry Ben Susan about, do we focus too much on getting the words absolutely right? So do we understand what we're delivering?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and of course, but on the other hand, it's good to be as near word perfect as you can be, whilst at the same time making it a pleasure, because there's nothing worse than an older, experienced brother coming up and putting his hand up. Done with sincerity, Steve. Done with sincerity.
Well, I
you haven't been word perfect.
No, I often say that I enjoy doing the ceremony of the empty chair when David Harries, who knows his ritual inside out, and you can go to a meeting where David is there.
Yeah.
And if somebody stumbles, David is there to give them the word, which I think is amazing. The gentleman has such a memory for Masonry and ritual, but he doesn't know the ceremony of the empty chair. And I tell him that.
Yeah.
Gentlemen,
Now, what's quite good about this, obviously, also, it has put Suffolk Provincial Stewards Lodge on the map across a lot of provinces. Especially, we've come away from London meetings, and you've had the the Metropolitan Grand Master come up and say, "Oh my God, what a fantastic ceremony!"
That's right.
You Suffolk Stewards,
remember it. Yeah.
So,
Peter.
Yeah, I'd also like to say that it's put Suffolk Masonry really on the map, because a number of lodges have left Great Britain and gone to America and everywhere else, but they've always, when they're doing a performance, it's always been Masonic ritual. Always. We're not. We're going to do a complete, a one-off, something that's different. So I did some research into this, went through our library and everything here, and I can't find anything to say that a British lodge or an English lodge has gone to America before and performed unless it's been ritual.
yeah.
So what we're doing is completely different. It's going to put Suffolk, I feel, Suffolk Masonry really to the forefront.
Well,
we wish you well on that.
Yes, we do.
Well.
Peter, can I thank you for having being bullied by John and Ian in a very nice. I think there was a little bit of alcohol involved, but we would have been lost had you not taken to doing the script.
I wondered.
And we are very grateful to you, and particularly John Royce. But thank you very much for joining us in this podcast. When you come back from America, you'll have to come and join us again and tell us how it went.
Be a pleasure.
So, gentlemen, for the time being, thank you very much. Thank you again for joining me on Suffolk Province's free and accepted podcasting as we explore the craft and royal arch. Please join me and my guests for more episodes.